Hello, Michael Mandaville here with How I Write. And today's idea is working from a historical fact. So let's take a look at that. When I was conceiving the idea for my novel Maroc, I knew it would be set in Morocco. Maroc is the French word for Morocco, and it has a long history with France. Some of it very bad, I would say, in terms of being a former colony and subjected to occupation by France, bombardment, and in general, Morocco did not receive its independence, I believe, until the 1956 to 58 era, when the king came back from exile. So that kind of led me into looking into a different part of the history of France and Morocco. Of course, if the name of my novel is Maroc, I'd certainly better know about Morocco, and I visited there and also read a lot about it. But when I actually wanted to advance the plot, I started looking at different parts of history. So if we go to Wikipedia, and you should always be careful with Wikipedia because you want to double check to make sure things are correct. They have bias like anything, anybody, any institution. So you want to double check things, and when I scanned down here, I went right away to the geography, which I've looked at, but also here the political world, particularly the military and foreign relations. So because what I'm looking for in history is conflict, and in conflict, of course, is drama, and that's the point of writing our novel. So when I click down here, you can see about the elements about the Moroccan military, which is pretty good in terms of its reach and its capabilities and its updated equipment. So that gave me a thought about how the history of it would affect my plot set in Morocco. There's also a part here in the Western Sahara, which was a disputed region. So I glommed onto that because I thought, okay, anytime there's an international dispute, and I'm dealing with a story about espionage and spies, including a French spy, so there adds the history of France into Morocco. This area of the Western Sahara is south of Morocco, was Spanish Sahara, and there was a front called the Polisario Front. And that is still very contentious today with Morocco and its neighbor, Algeria. So now I'm looking at what do I have with the history with Algeria? And indeed, they have fought a couple wars and certainly a lot of disputes over their territory. So when you look at the Western Sahara, you could see right here, you can see here is Algeria, here's Morocco, this is the Spanish Sahara, and this is actually, this red line is a berm, a large wall of sand for a security issue. So they put this up to stop any of the rebels from the Polisario Front to go from Mauritania or this little sliver of Algeria here into the Western Sahara. So part of that is one way that you can put together a plot. So in doing some more research about Morocco and Algeria, its neighbor, and this potential conflict in the Western Sahara with the Polisario Front, I actually found the Sand War was a border conflict between Algeria and Morocco in October of 1963, resulted largely from the Moroccan government's claim to portions of Algeria's Tindouf and Betchar provinces. So this is something that's obviously brewing, it's still there, it's very contentious. At the same time, you have the superpower rivalry in certainly the 70s, 80s, 90s, which is the United States was an ally with Morocco, and Algeria was an ally of the Soviet Union. So I'm also looking to not only link two things here. One is about the plot, and by digging into the history of it here, I can increase the probabilities and possibilities of my plot, because now I have a lot of threads to work with to weave my little carpet of plotting devices. And when I was examining this, I looked up Algeria and the Algerian War, which was their war of independence. France had colonized Algeria, and between 1954 and I believe 62, there was a war between the French army, in essence, their paratrooper divisions in particular, and the people in Algeria. This was a particularly brutal war. It was known for its torture, for massacres, for a very intense war in this era. France at the same time was in Vietnam, and they had tried to hold on to that as a colony until Dien Bien Phu, I believe in 54, when they were decisively defeated. So this is a little piece of history here where our French operative, one of my characters, is reflecting back into how France has still kept an eye on Algeria. They are, after all, right across from France in the Mediterranean. There are probably 600,000 Algerians living in France, and the idea that they would at least have interests there, not saying anything against Algerians, and the idea that they would have an interest. And this is how countries operate in terms of their intelligence services to know what's going on around them. So that kind of gives an interesting thread there. And at the same time, there was in this Algerian war another part that profoundly changed France. And that was the coup of 1958, I believe. And it was called the May 1958 crisis in France, where some generals here, you can see a number of these generals actually sought to overthrow the government of France, and that's when they called in Charles de Gaulle to temper their ambitions. And this resulted in the change of government, and I mean the change of government where France went from the Fourth Republic, which was very weak post-war, to a Fifth Republic, the current form of government, with a very strong presidency, which is what Charles de Gaulle wanted and which was promoted after this coup. And so literally it changed France. This particular war is a domino effect, I suppose, of events. So that also enlightens some degree of my plot. If we look at it, we have the Western Sahara, we have the Polisario Front supported by Algeria, we have the Algerian-French connection, which is deep and painful and profound. And if we look towards the present day, why that would matter, we could look towards the energy crisis in the European Union, in France and other countries, where Algeria supplies a lot of natural gas and oil to Europe. And that is currently, as of 2022 right now, a very big issue with a looming winter. So the idea that they would want to know what was going on with their oil facilities and everything else today still matters. So this allows me to weave together the interest of my character, the French intelligence agent, together with the plot. And by looking up this history, you start to think about it. One thing you could do is use index cards. If you, I always have index cards all around, and I always like to handwrite on them, and then I put them on a table and just kind of move them around, and certainly things line up. And I think having your hands literally on them and seeing them physically really helps your brainstorming. That's my opinion. And give that try a technique. You could put little pieces of history on each card and move them around, and then put your characters' names and see how that works. And sometimes when you go outside and do it on a table or a park bench or somewhere else other than your office, a lot of good thoughts and ideas and creativity comes to you. So that's how to use history in writing your plot and working with your characters. Thanks for joining me, and good writing.